I was at my desk enjoying a mid-morning coffee that my assistant had brought me, though she used artificial sugar. I jokingly threatened to switch to black tea instead. I was mulling over a copyright issue that needed immediate resolution, but the state government was dragging its feet on releasing sensitive documents. Their usual inefficiency was making it impossible to get anything done. State employees often dodged accountability unless explicitly directed. I wondered how many layers of bureaucracy a simple task had to navigate before any action was taken. I was stuck, unable to move on to my next project, and staring at potential financial losses if materials had to be scrapped. The growing complexity of societal concerns had tangled even straightforward matters, including renaming job roles. I felt too old for this endless red tape. "There's a young woman here to see you," said Lisa Whitaker, stepping into my office. She wouldn't give her name but asked me to pass along this picture. As I glanced at the photograph, dread flooded through me. Son of a cow, I thought. Why now? It was a picture of Melissa, my ex-wife, and me on our wedding day, taken 18 years ago. It brought back a storm of betrayal, heartbreak, and tears. Back then, people speculated I had moved away to heal, and they were right. At the time, I knew nothing of money or influence, but life had since taught me a thing or two. "Ask her if she's Samantha or Stephanie Wills," I said, handing Lisa a USB drive and a Ziploc bag. "If she is, show her the video on this. If she wants a copy, give her everything and return the original to me. Once you're done, come back, and I'll answer your questions." At 42, I had settled comfortably into bachelorhood. My brief marriage to Melissa Harper had shattered my trust. From then on, people had to earn it, a rarity. I stood 6 feet 4 inches with a 38-inch waist, weighing 200 pounds. I hit the gym 2 hours after work most days. My dark brown hair was starting to show gray, yet I still turned heads. Relationships were casual at best, marriage and love were off the table. An hour later, Lisa returned, leaving the door open. "The young woman still has a lot of questions," she said. Her serious expression told me she wouldn't leave without answers. She sat down across from me, her emerald green eyes locked on mine. "Do you know which one she is?" I asked. "Samantha," Lisa replied. "She's devastated. She cried, saying, 'We've been lied to our whole lives. If my heart's right, he's been lied to as well.' Samantha is one of a pair of identical twins. The clip you saw was her mother's last message to me, recorded 7 months before the twins were born," I explained. "I learned about them from mutual friends long after the fact. Melissa never told me she was pregnant. The other files on the drive outline what would happen if I ever tried to contact them. Her father, then with Homeland Security, orchestrated false charges that cost me my career with the Bureau. He despised me and used his power to ensure I was ruined. She divorced me to marry my former best friend, her lover for months before our split. As far as I know, he's their biological father." "How did she find you? What does she want?" I asked. "Samantha found an old photograph in their attic with your name on the back. She searched online, recognized you, and tracked you down. She also discovered your marriage certificate and divorce records. Her twin sister is critically ill and in need of a bone marrow donor. She came hoping you might be a match. But I'm not their father." "That doesn't make sense," I replied. "Melissa was already involved with her new husband before I ever knew her. Her father ensured she stayed away from me. Samantha suspected something and convinced her doctors to run a DNA test as part of the compatibility screening," Lisa explained. "It turns out, Mr. Wills isn't their biological father." Lisa's expression softened into a smile as tears welled in my eyes. If Samantha was right, Melissa had lied to me all those years ago. "I knew she was related to you the moment I saw her," Lisa said, standing up. "She has your features, it's unmistakable. Are you ready for perhaps the biggest shock of your life, Lisa?" I asked. Send the data on the drive to my publishers. Stress that they must release it in a way that can't be traced back to me. Emphasize the urgency. Then, arrange a quick DNA test and clear my schedule. If it's true, I'll need proof to confront Melissa. If I am their father, I want a lawyer to fight for my parental rights. Lastly, get me the hospital's details. I need to see Samantha's sister immediately. Lisa nodded and turned to leave. Samantha, come in and introduce yourself, she called out. Samantha entered, and the moment I saw her, I knew. She looked exactly like my younger sister at 16. Emotion overwhelmed me, and tears began to flow. Samantha started crying too. Lisa snapped a few photos to mark this life-changing moment and left us alone. You and Samantha have an appointment for blood testing at 1, Lisa said when she returned. The lab promised expedited results, and I charged it to the company card. I also arranged for you to meet your sister Melissa at Carlton's at 3 and reserved a private table. Samantha needs to see what we do. Melissa will make sure her kids are taken care of. She knows you have important family news. I stood there, emotional and unsure, watching Samantha walk toward me. I had so many questions. I hugged her tightly as Lisa closed the door. It was hard to grasp that I might be a father. Samantha seemed to feel the same, trembling as we left my office. We tried to keep things light, taking baby steps to figure everything out. After arranging for the clinic to email the DNA report, we headed out for a late lunch. I learned that Samantha had skipped school and driven all day until she had to stop and rest at a station. I was furious that she would do something so reckless but bit my tongue, realizing I might be acting like an overprotective dad. It also reminded me of something I would have done at her age. When we arrived at Carlton's, I spotted Melissa's car. I know we're here to meet your sister, but why did Lisa set this up without telling you first? Samantha asked. You're about to see what Lisa and I saw when we first met you, I replied. It will explain why we believe you and Susan are my daughters and why I was shocked and the test came back positive. Can I call you Dad? Samantha asked. I laughed and smiled. I'd love that. Carlton's was a family-owned restaurant, a notch above Red Lobster, with an impeccable reputation. The owner and hostess escorted us directly to our private booth. I ordered a bottle of sparkling cider and extra tissues. Melissa had her back to us, so I asked Samantha to wait while I approached. Hi, sis. Thanks for meeting me, I said. Melissa looked up and said, You look happy. What's going on? Melissa, stand up. There's someone I want you to meet, I said as Samantha walked toward us. This is Melissa's daughter, Samantha. Melissa turned and froze, staring like she'd just seen a younger version of herself. They shared so many features: long brunette hair, high cheekbones, small ears, light blue eyes, and warm, kind smiles. Oh my God, Melissa gasped. Paul, you should have warned me. This is unbelievable. How long have you known about her? About 5 hours, Samantha said, her voice trembling. I surprised him at his office. Lisa and Dad knew right away. Seeing you, I understand why. The server returned with tissues, seeming to understand why we needed privacy. Melissa, still tearful, explained that 3 more people would join us, prompting the hostess to move us to a larger table. Melissa called her husband to join us and notified our parents, asking them to come immediately for a family emergency. When Mom asked what was wrong, Melissa said she couldn't explain over the phone. The atmosphere was heavy with emotion. I got a text from Lisa saying the publisher had released the information and that it would be on the 6 o'clock news. We had just settled after our first glass of cider when Melissa's husband and our parents arrived. I laughed as I heard Dad's booming voice. There'd better be a good reason for this. Melissa and I stood to greet them. Mom, Dad, Lou, I'd like you to meet Melissa's daughter, Samantha Wills, Melissa said proudly. Mom instantly recognized the resemblance and broke into a wide smile, brimming with pride. She finally had the granddaughter she'd always wished for. Dad was stunned, uncharacteristically speechless. When he finally spoke, he said, "I see it, but it's hard to believe." Mom sat beside Samantha, holding her hand tightly, too moved to speak. Dad ordered 2 more bottles of cider, his pride evident. After our glasses were refilled, I stood up with mine. "I need to explain," I said as Samantha started recording with my phone. I recounted how we'd met and what had happened earlier that day. Then Dad stood up. "Samantha, we don't need a DNA test to confirm what we already know. Welcome to our family. You have 2 more aunts to meet soon. Promise us you'll always consider this family your home." Samantha took the phone and spoke. "I came here seeking the truth, not knowing what I'd find. Today has changed everything for Dad and me. We didn't know until now. Meeting Aunt Melissa showed me what unconditional love is. My twin sister Susan will feel the same." I scanned the table as everyone grew emotional. Even my father, who rarely showed emotion, had tears in his eyes. Mom held up 2 fingers, crying louder. I stopped the recording after capturing everyone's joyful tears. Samantha added her and Susan's contact info to my phone and sent a text to her twin sister. She showed me the video she sent. "If what we think is true, the DNA test will confirm. Watch the 6 o'clock news. Love, your twin." Mom, still in disbelief, asked for pictures of Samantha and Susan. Samantha obliged, showing her phone gallery. Mom demanded copies for her laptop, enlarging them to full screen for everyone to admire. Samantha put her phone away, and I realized no one knew where she was. My phone buzzed, it was Susan. I stood up and walked away to answer it. Dad noticed my watery eyes and raised a brow in question. Samantha mouthed, "It's my sister." Dad nodded in understanding as I answered. "Hello, this is Susan." "After seeing the video, I had to call," Susan said. "Mom won't be home until at least 7. She's stopping by the police station to get an update on Samantha." I'm pretending to know nothing. "The police were here earlier and left their card. Any ideas on what I should do?" "Get him to watch the 6 o'clock news and pay attention to what's revealed about me," I replied. "Tell him you'll talk when your parents aren't around and show him the video. Give him my number and ask him to text first before calling. He'll understand after watching the news. When we have the DNA proof, Samantha and I might bring the whole family," I added. "What do you mean?" Susan asked. "After explaining Samantha's actions to help you, the family will spread the word. I don't know how many will come, but those who can will," I explained. "Why?" she asked. "In the Morgan family, blood is thicker than water. If I'm not a match, someone else might be." "Just like that?" Susan asked, skeptical. "No doubt. You'll see," I said with a chuckle. "We are strangers, after all." We talked a bit more before saying goodbye. Susan's relieved sobs echoed in my ears. During dinner, I explained to the family why Samantha was there. Almost immediately, phones started buzzing as everyone began calling others to spread the word and organize potential matches. My mother took charge, quickly shifting into planning mode. "Samantha, how did you get here?" my father asked. "I drove my old 1994 Voyager van," she replied with a laugh. "It's one step up from a rent-a-wreck. It's in Dad's parking lot. Son, take that van to my dealership in the morning." "She's not driving back in that," Dad said firmly. "It's a miracle she made it here. At her age, you had about as much sense as she does. She's determined." "What do you plan to give her?" I asked. "She can pick one out," Dad replied with a wink and a smile. "If I could choose, it would be a 4x4. I love the outdoors, Samantha said. Dad grinned. Perfect. We all love the outdoors. If the weather allowed, we were always fishing, camping, or hunting. He launched into stories about my childhood, including the summer I learned to barefoot water ski. He held court, entertaining everyone with his vivid storytelling. Both my parents insisted Samantha stay with them that night, agreeing it wouldn't look right for us to stay alone. After dinner, Dad drove them to her van and then brought it home himself. Mom was thrilled, already planning ways to spoil her new granddaughter. Later that night, around 10 p.m., a police investigator called. He told me it had taken him 2 hours to complete a background check on me. The media was buzzing with questions about the information I'd released. We discussed the situation, including related complications. Seeing the 3 generations in the video had answered many of his questions. I explained that we were rushing DNA tests to confirm the relationship and that Samantha was staying with my parents. Once confirmed, we'd return to see if I could be a match for Susan. I asked him to buy us time and promised to update him on our progress. Susan later told me the investigator reported back to her about our conversation. I was confronting my past again, but with a new perspective. This time, I wouldn't let my ex-wife's family intimidate me with their power and money. Instead, I planned to use the media, the courts, and the truth to fight back. I wasn't seeking revenge, just justice. Armed with resources, evidence, and growing determination, I was ready to face 4 people and the federal government if needed. The next morning, I was in my office ensuring any schedule changes wouldn't disrupt my plans. I set up tasks for Lisa to manage while I was gone. Lisa kept checking the email accounts like a hawk, peppering me with questions about my day and extracting every detail she could. To be honest, I never tired of looking at Lisa Whitaker. In her youth, she must have been every teenage boy's dream. Her naturally styled brown hair framed her soft features perfectly, and her piercing emerald green eyes and full lips were still captivating. As a single man, I often admired her but was thankful she never caught me staring. Finally, Lisa received the DNA test results, printed them, and exclaimed, "It's confirmed, you are her father." Lisa immediately called the lab to send the information to Susan's specialist. Then, she began searching for the toughest litigation lawyer in New York. After vetting a few options, she chose the best and arranged a Skype chat. The lawyer agreed to work on a percentage basis, confident the case was a slam dunk with DNA proof. We would go after my ex-wife, her husband, and her parents for denying me my parental rights. The restrictive court order against me would be overturned, exposing their deliberate actions. The supposed contract on my life, even if not factual, would illustrate their attempts to intimidate and control me. The lawyer saw immense potential in the case, even before involving the government. I told Lisa to send a gray, dust-covered box from my safe to our new lawyer. It contained legal proof that Melissa's father had tried to destroy my career and marriage. It had taken years to gather this evidence from various levels of government. I later learned that a police officer had shared the video, framing the story as a runaway daughter finding her biological father to save her sister's life. The narrative caused a media frenzy. "Mom, it's confirmed," I said on the phone. "I'm a father, twice over. Thank God. Be ready to leave tomorrow at 7 a.m. from the car lot," Mom replied. "I'll spread the news. Have you called your daughters?" We were now on the road, driving a fully loaded 2-year-old Ford Explorer to Oswego, New York. Samantha and I led the way with my parents in a tour bus, followed by 33 other vehicles. The family caravan, our tribe, was on its way when my phone rang. Samantha answered and put it on speaker. "You're being tracked by CNN," Susan said after exchanging greetings. "There's a tour bus with a sign saying, 'The Morgans are coming. 1 out of 141 should be a match.'" "Well, we have the DNA test proving he's our father," Samantha replied. "And I've got a new 2-year-old Ford Explorer to prove it." Dad said if it was confirmed, a lot of family would come, but I never expected this, Susan explained. It's given me a new hope I never imagined. I can't remember feeling this good. Dad's family spread the word, and people came out of the woodwork, Samantha said. I met so many relatives this morning. It's going to take multiple introductions to remember their names, first, second, and even third cousins. I'm so proud I want to change my last name to Morgan, Samantha added. I never knew families like this existed. I was so overwhelmed, I almost went off the road. That was when I decided this amazing experience would inspire my next book. My daughters were still chatting about Samantha's experiences when Susan said she had to go. Mom just walked in, she said. Dad, are you okay? Samantha asked, noticing my emotional state. I saw you get really quiet. How do you expect me to feel? I asked. I discovered I have 2 daughters who were raised by my ex-wife and my former friend without my knowledge. One is vibrant and full of life. The other is on the verge of dying. One is so strong and independent she moved mountains without thinking, just like I would. And now, she wants to take my name. Samantha, emotionally overwhelmed, replied, I was so focused on saving my sister's life. I didn't think about the impact on you. I wasn't a good match because I inherited a defective gene from our mother. The emotional mess I've caused will probably take days to settle. Can you forgive me? For what? Coming into my life. Turning everything upside down. No, I said, my voice breaking. That's what living is about. You've given everyone another person to love. You've given me a chance to be a real dad. Tears streamed down my face as I continued, your grandparents adore you. My mother is so proud. Seeing her face in you means everything to her. You and your sister have become her favorites by birthright. She's been spoiling us, Samantha said, smiling. We went shopping, and if she bought me an outfit, she got one for Sue too. She laughed, saying she had years of spoiling to catch up on. That's Mom, I said, chuckling. You'll find it impossible to distance her from you. Trust me, I've tried. Melissa and my other sisters will brag about this for weeks. By the end, this will become a family legend shared for generations. Meanwhile, we learned that as soon as Melissa saw the live news feed about our arrival, she began experiencing severe panic attacks. The walls she had built were crumbling. Feeling stronger than ever, Susan confronted her mother. Mom, why did you hide the truth about our real dad? Susan demanded. When she got no answer, she pressed harder. You hid the truth from us and made decisions about our lives. What gave you the right to play God? Even Dad didn't know. If Samantha hadn't found out about him and sought the truth, would you have let me die? Melissa had no answers, never imagining the truth would surface. Her father had hated me from the start and had done everything in his power to drive me away. Thankfully, Susan's doctor walked in at that moment. We received DNA from a man we didn't know, proving he is Susan's biological father, the doctor said. He's coming to be tested, and there's a good chance he's a bone marrow match. He should arrive tomorrow afternoon, and for his protection, he'll be under guard. Mom, my biological dad is coming, with 140 others in case he's not a match, Susan said. He wants to give me a fighting chance. Why? Melissa asked. To him and his family, blood is thicker than water, Susan replied. Though I'm a stranger to them, I am family. And family comes first. You had to know we look like our real dad's mother, Susan added. Watch this video, it proves everything. Melissa reluctantly watched the video of my family meeting Samantha. 3 generations shared the same unmistakable features. She could no longer deny the truth. Her daughters had evidence, and her husband's lies were unraveling. Then, a man appeared at Susan's hospital room door and asked for Melissa. When she admitted she was Melissa Harper, he handed her a large legal envelope. You have been served, he said. Sharon fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Susan, standing over her mother with fury etched across her face, felt no pity. Mom, why did Grandpa put a contract on my biological dad's life? Susan asked coldly, fully aware Sharon wouldn't answer. Meanwhile, Arnold Franklin Harper had just stepped out of a corporate meeting. As he strolled down the hallway, a man approached him and handed over legal documents. Arnold sat down in the reception area, opening the envelope with shaking hands. The first document was a lawsuit against him and Sharon for denying Paul his legal rights as the father of his daughters. The second targeted him and his in-laws, accusing them of conspiring to destroy Paul's marriage and career. It was clear that Paul Carlson was seeking justice, and sole custody of his daughters. The lawsuit claimed that if Samantha hadn't found Paul, he would never have known about them. It cited moral abandonment and suggested Sharon and Arnold would have let Susan die to keep their secrets. Given the media coverage, defending their actions in court would be almost impossible. Arnold's mind wandered back to their university days. He and Paul had been roommates and football teammates. They had both fallen for Sharon, but Paul had won her heart. Arnold had even been the best man at their wedding. But Sharon's father never approved of Paul, believing his modest background made him unworthy. With her father's encouragement, Arnold began pursuing Sharon. While Paul was busy with his FBI assignments, Arnold and Sharon had grown closer. Eventually, they became lovers while Paul was away on an undercover operation for 2 months. When Paul returned, Sharon's father confronted him with recorded evidence of the affair. Sharon, unaware she was pregnant at the time, thought her missed periods were due to stress. Her father convinced Paul to file for divorce immediately. When the twins were born, Sharon's family knew Paul was their biological father. But Sharon's father had already orchestrated Paul's dismissal from the FBI with fabricated charges. It took Paul 4 years to clear his name, during which time he left the area in disgrace. Sharon and Arnold married shortly after and had 2 sons together. Arnold now wondered how Sharon would react when the truth came out. Samantha, I, and the family caravan arrived at our final stop of the night around 9 p.m., utterly exhausted after 14 hours of driving. We ordered a light meal to our rooms and collapsed into bed until the 5 a.m. wake-up call. Samantha and I left early for a meeting I had arranged with the Oswego Police Department and an FBI representative. The rest of the group followed at 7 a.m. for the 6-hour drive. Samantha dropped me off at the police station, where I met Detective Peter Rogers and FBI agent Chad Gerardo. Over the next 90 minutes, we discussed Sharon's father's potential involvement and the legal proceedings against Arnold. I handed over a USB stick containing my evidence and provided my lawyer's contact information. Under official protection, I was escorted to the hospital for a blood draw to determine if I could be a bone marrow match for Susan. As I approached Susan's private room, I heard her and Samantha talking. The hospital staff recognized me by my writing pseudonym, and one nurse asked me to sign a book for her. When I walked into the room, Samantha lit up. "Dad," she said in surprise. "I didn't expect you so soon." Susan, lying in bed, looked frail, her skin loose and her face reflecting how close she was to the brink. Despite her condition, her smile was wide, and her eyes sparkled with hope. "Susan, they're rushing the test results." "It should be ready in 30 minutes, I said. "The rest of the family is checking into their hotels. My parents are having their bone marrow drawn now and will meet you soon. If more than one of us is a match, the doctor plans to do a double transplant simultaneously in both arms." Susan broke down in tears. I sat on the edge of her bed and held her while she cried, trying to stay strong. Samantha captured a photo of the moment, both of us crying, but also sharing relief and joy. "Grandma, Grandpa, come in and meet my sister," Samantha said. The 5 of us talked for over an hour until Susan's doctor, Dr. Proctor, entered, smiling. "My mother and I are perfect matches for Susan," I announced. Dr. Proctor asked if we were ready to be admitted for surgery at 6 a.m. the following morning. Both of us agreed immediately. My father whispered, "Thank God." We prayed for a miracle the whole way up here. "Don't you need my parents' permission?" Susan asked hesitantly. "Normally, yes," Dr. Proctor explained. "But we received a court order this morning thanks to Mr. Carlson. It allows us to proceed if he or a relative is a match. The judge determined that your mother and her husband weren't acting in your best interests." Dr. Proctor added, "Mr. Carlson will also cover any costs not covered by your insurance." Samantha smirked. "Not surprising, sis. With what Mom and Arnold did, Dad had no choice but to act fast. Legally, he had no rights, so we used the courts to prevent any delay." A security guard entered the room, informing us we were about to appear on national news. Susan turned on CNN, and the broadcast revealed my identity as the author of a best-selling book series worth an estimated $40 million. Sandra, Susan, and the doctor stared at me, visibly amazed. My parents, equally shocked, exchanged glances. They had no idea about my success, thinking I was just an independent corporate financial advisor. "My God, Dad," Susan said, her voice full of wonder. "I've read all your books. They're incredible." I chuckled. After my former life was destroyed, I had to reinvent myself. Writing became my therapy. The first book's success was a turning point, and everything grew from there. I keep my books current, exposing raw truths about world events, societal views, and morals, whether people like it or not. For the first time in 15 years, I checked into a hospital, along with my mom. Susan wanted to share a room with me, but hospital security wouldn't allow it. Sandra spent the evening running between 3 rooms, mine, Susan's, and Grandma Morgan's. My dad, ever the family communicator, called relatives to give them updates. Meanwhile, Sharon and Arnold arrived after work, their attitudes brimming with tension. Their presence was met with cold indifference. "Susan," Sharon began tentatively, "what's happening?" "I'm being prepped for surgery," Susan replied. "Tomorrow morning, I'll receive a double bone marrow transplant under court order." "How is this even possible?" Sharon asked, her voice rising in alarm. "Mom, Arnold, my biological dad and his mother are perfect matches. Both are donating so I can recover fully," Susan explained with a calm defiance. She paused before adding, "Mom, do you know who Jason Blackstone is? He's your favorite author." "Well, Jason Blackstone is a pen name for Paul Earl Carlson, my bio dad." Sharon and Arnold's faces drained of color. Their carefully constructed narrative was crumbling, and they knew it. They had hoped the court case would disappear, but with my net worth revealed, it was clear I wasn't after money, I was seeking justice. "Mom," Susan continued, her voice sharp, "did you know Grandpa has been in FBI custody all day? You might want to check with Grandma to see if he's home. Can you explain why this is happening? Sandra and I deserve to know." Susan smiled broadly, her confidence unshakable. "Sandra's somewhere in the hospital, probably with Dad or Grandma Morgan, if you'd like to see her." Sandra and I were in my hospital room discussing how she would handle her mother when Sharon found her. A knock at the door interrupted us. A security guard poked his head in. "Mr. Carlson, do you know a Jackie Stoddard?" "Yes," I replied. The guard opened the door, and Jackie walked in. She had been my unwavering support for the past decade. I'd stood by her during her messy divorce after her husband got his assistant pregnant. Jackie, now 35 and a single mother, still wore her wedding diamond, a curious relic of her past life. "What are you doing here?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "I'm here to do what I always do, look after you," Jackie said with a smile. "Dr. Proctor said you'd be here for at least 3 days. I booked a private jet and hotel with the corporate card. Sandra texted me." Sandra smirked. Dad, FYI, she loves you. She couldn't stay away. I raised an eyebrow, amused, as another knock sounded at the door. The guard returned. Sharon and Arnold Harper want to see you. Will you allow them in? Only after they've been searched, Jackie interjected firmly. What's your relationship with Mr. Carlson? The guard asked, looking skeptical. Jackie smiled coyly and held up her hand. I'm his fiancée. Didn't you see my ring? Sandra winked at me and mouthed, told you. I laughed despite myself. When Sharon and Arnold finally entered, Sandra wasted no time. Dad, she said, her voice cold, I wouldn't trust these two for a second. They're just here to cover their backs. You don't know the half of it, Sandra, Jackie said. Your dad's lawyer has video evidence showing your stepfather receiving a check from your grandfather. It was payment for breaking up your parents' marriage. If he succeeded, he'd manage your grandparents' finances for a 3% annual fee. Sharon turned pale. How do you know this is true? And who are you? Mom, she's Dad's fiancée and a master researcher, Sandra replied sharply. Her name is Jackie Stoddard, and I trust her more than I trust you. Sharon's face turned ashen. Her daughters were pulling away, and there was nothing she could do. Jackie continued, her voice unwavering. It's all true, Sharon. Paul ordered his lawyer to release every video and audio tape to the FBI, including a letter from your father admitting he funded the recordings. Your father's hatred for Paul blinded him, he didn't care who got hurt as long as he got his way. Sharon turned to Arnold. Is this true? Arnold's guilty expression was answer enough. Sharon's shoulders sagged under the weight of the truth. In that moment, she realized what she had lost when I divorced her, the only man who had ever truly loved her. Jackie stepped closer, her voice gentler now. Sharon, a word of advice, don't let others manipulate you like you let your father and Arnold manipulate you. Sharon looked at me with a flicker of remorse. Paul, I want to talk to you alone after the surgery. For now, I need to go home and reflect. She turned to Sandra. Will you walk me to my car? Sandra nodded. I'll be back soon. Mom and I have things to discuss. As we watched them leave, Sharon's composure broke the moment she stepped into the hallway. Sobs racked her body. Jackie and I exchanged a look of understanding. Sharon hadn't known the full extent of her father's manipulations until now. Arnold, paralyzed by fear, sat frozen, realizing the truth had shattered the life they had built. Sharon would never trust him again. Paul, Arnold said, his voice barely a whisper. I dreaded this day. I thought you'd never return. If we had met accidentally, I could have brushed it off, Arnold said quietly. I never saw this happening. It's best if I leave and say no more. He turned and walked out, leaving Jackie and me alone. I turned to Jackie, and for the first time, she blushed under my gaze. It wasn't just a look of gratitude or admiration, it was the way a man looks at a woman he truly cares for. For once, I was opening myself up, wondering if Jackie had been playing me or finally admitting her true feelings. Did I love her as a friend or something more? Either way, my daughters had awakened something in me. I had spent years living in the shadows of others, finding joy in their excitement while neglecting my own. Jackie, I said softly, we have a lot to discuss while I'm recovering. These last few days have woken me up. I got complacent, settling for the sidelines instead of being in the game. Jackie met my gaze, her voice trembling slightly. Paul, when I got divorced, you stepped in. My kids were still young, and you've been more of a dad to them than their own father ever was. From baseball games to father-daughter dances, you were always there. I know why you pay me well, more than what's typical for my role. You want to make sure my kids, the ones in your heart, are cared for. She smiled wistfully. On their birthdays, you always went overboard, making them the envy of their friends. During summer breaks, you took us on special trips, creating memories we'll cherish forever. You answer their questions like a father should. They love you, and you love them. Your only problem, Paul, is your fear of commitment. Her words hit me hard, just as Sandra's had earlier. I couldn't deny the truth. I walked over, sat beside Jackie, and took her hand. Looking into her eyes, I gathered my thoughts. Sharon cheated on me. Her father's power intimidated me. My best friend betrayed me. I've lived with the shadow of a threat on my life for years. I put myself in protection mode, Jackie, until now. These past few days, I realized I've been hiding from life. Can we go on our first actual date? Or is it too late for you and me? Jackie laughed through her tears. Took you long enough, you old fool, she said before kissing me. I'm texting our kids to tell them we're a couple now and working things out. Pretty sure of yourself, I said, grinning. I texted Sandra to thank her and asked if everything was okay. She replied, Mom didn't know. She's taking it hard. Won't be back tonight. Let Susan know. Jackie and I went to Susan's room to share the news. After introducing Jackie as my girlfriend, we recounted the events of the day and showed Susan Sandra's text. We had just finished when my sister Barbara entered. I just had to meet her, Barbara said, walking in with a wide smile. Jackie, what are you doing here? Before Jackie could answer, Barbara's expression changed to one of realization. Wait, he finally clued in, didn't he? Jackie nodded sheepishly. Took him long enough, Barbara teased before turning to Susan. Susan, I'm your Aunt Barbara, and the man entering now is your Uncle Lou, my husband. You'll learn quickly that we Morgans speak our minds, like it or not. I excused myself and went to the nurse's station to text Sandra about Susan's pizza preferences. She replied, Susan likes everything but anchovies. I ordered 3 extra-large pizzas and 3 2-liter colas for delivery. Then, I called Dad and asked him to bring Mom up in 30 minutes for a pizza party. We bent the no-eating rule a bit but got carried away with the fun. Even the head nurse stopped by for a slice, leaving with a smile and saying, Your actions lifted the spirits of the whole floor. I can't thank you enough. At 4 a.m., Mom and I were taken to prepare for the operation. We supported each other until we were wheeled into surgery. I stayed awake until the medication took hold. When I woke up, it was done. Dr. Proctor informed the family that the bone marrow transfer went smoothly, but it would take hours to see if it worked. When it did, the room filled with cheers and relief. As the family began preparing to leave, Jackie stayed behind to care for me. You're the worst patient ever, Jackie teased as she handed me my phone. I'm not even sick, I protested. You're like a bull in a china shop, impatient, unruly, and miserable. Keep it up, and you'll earn a bad reputation, she quipped. She then updated me on Mom's recovery and how well she was doing. Jackie returned my phone, and the first texts I saw were from her kids. One read, When does she get her engagement ring, Dad? Another asked, When do we meet our new sisters? Your kids are too smart for their own good, I said, showing Jackie the messages. She read them and smiled through teary eyes. After the operation, they had a lot of questions, and I told them everything. They weren't surprised. They said, Mom, he's always treated us like his own. Most of our friends wish their dads were like him. We've always seen him as our dad. I took her hand and said with a grin, I guess we'll have a short engagement. Have you heard from the twins? I asked. Sandra and her mom are with Susan. She's doing well, considering everything, Jackie said. Even though she's still medicated, she's asking a lot of questions. Sandra told her about the pizza party. Susan can't get over how much she looks like her aunt and grandmother. She's already planning a girls' day out with them when she recovers. Find me my pants, I said with determination. I want to see Susan myself, and then check on Mom. The nurses tried to stop me, insisting it was too soon after surgery for me to be up and about, but I wasn't hearing it. With Jackie holding my hand for balance, I made my way to Susan's room. Surprisingly, the pain was manageable, and I was determined to see my daughter. As soon as we entered, we noticed the change. Susan's complexion had improved dramatically, and there was a sparkle in her eyes that almost brought tears to mine. "Who are Tammy and Timothy Stoddard?" Sandra asked suddenly, her tone curious. "My children," Jackie replied. "They're 13 and 11. Why do you ask?" "I got a Facebook friend request from them this morning." "So did Susan," Sandra said, holding up her phone. "You both need to read what they sent me," I said, handing my phone to Sandra. She read the message, smiled, and passed the phone to Susan. "I want it back so I can add their numbers to my contacts," I added. Before I could retrieve my phone, Sharon entered the room and asked to speak with me privately. Reluctantly, I followed her to the waiting room. "Paul," Sharon began hesitantly, "I had a long talk with my mother last night. She admitted she remembered how much Dad hated you but never realized how far he went. My daughters want to finish the school year here and then live with you. They also want their last name changed to yours. They feel what Arnold and I did is unforgivable, and I can't argue with them." She sighed deeply. "They've made it clear they'll go to court if I refuse. They no longer trust me, and I can't blame them. Will you let them come? You know my family. They wouldn't let me refuse, even if I wanted to," I replied. "I'll gladly take them. Jackie will, too. We'll just need a bigger place. I'll drop the lawsuit against you if you agree to joint custody. But the suit against the rest of your family will move forward. The twins are old enough to decide their own futures." Sharon nodded. "Agreed," she said softly. I offered to pay for the girl's name change, but she declined. Together, we walked back into Susan's room. The twins watched us closely as we entered. "Jackie," I said, turning to her, "it looks like we're going to need at least a 6-bedroom house." Jackie smiled warmly, and the girls erupted in delighted screams. Sharon smiled weakly. "Girls," she said, "your father and I agree, you get your wishes, provided Jackie agrees. I'll call the lawyer tomorrow to start the legal process for your name change," she added. "Paul," Jackie asked, her voice playful, "are you ready for this? A house full of teenagers." "No one's ever ready," I replied with a laugh. "But we'll adapt. I'm just getting used to the idea of 2 carrying my name." "Make that 4, Jackie said. "Tammy and Timothy want you to adopt them. They're already signing their names as Carlson. Call Roger Mauser's firm to start the paperwork," she continued. "Then text the kids to let them know our plans. Let's also start researching the best schools so we know where to house hunt." Sandra, ever resourceful, picked up her phone and made a call on speaker. "Hello." Tammy's voice came through the line. "Who are you, and what do you want?" "This is Sandra, your soon-to-be older sister," Sandra said with a grin. "Is Timothy with you? Can you prove it?" "Because I can't," Tammy replied suspiciously. "Dad taught us not to take calls or messages from unknown sources without proof." "Seriously, are you scamming me?" Jackie jumped in. "Tammy, this is Jackie. Paul and I are getting married, and you were just talking to his daughter, Sandra. We're all going to be Carlsons. Susan and Sandra are changing their last names, and Paul is starting the process to adopt you and Timothy." "Sweet," Tammy said. "Let Dad know, it's about time. By the way, how's Susan? We've been waiting to hear." Jackie and I exchanged a look, smiling at this first conversation of our blended family. She squeezed my hand in support. "I'm improving," Susan said, her voice steady. "So far, so good. I'll text you both so you can add my number." Susan, Sandra, Timothy said firmly, our dad has been the only father we've known. Your dad has been better than any of our friends' parents. Mom's been in love with him for a long time. When we all get together, we need you to accept that we're siblings, nothing more, nothing less. Susan and Sandra nodded in agreement, visibly touched. Jackie, her eyes filled with tears, turned to me. They're showing your morals and standards, she said softly. You should be proud they've taken your values to heart. I was. After saying goodbye, Jackie and I headed to see my mom. Dad was with her, and they looked surprised when we entered. My dad caught a knowing look from Jackie and grinned. He could sense something was up. Mom, I said, you're up and about already. Have you seen Susan? She looks so much better. We haven't yet, Mom said. How's she doing? Her complexion is improving, and her spirits are up. It's still early, but things are looking good, I replied. Now, we need to talk about something serious, I continued. We're not going anywhere, Dad said. Let's hear it. Susan and Sandra will live with me after the school year, I explained. They'll change their last name to ours. Sharon agreed to joint custody and the name change. It was the twins' idea. That's wonderful. Mom and Dad exclaimed in unison. That's not all, Jackie added, her voice trembling with emotion. Your son has finally decided to make an honest woman out of me. Elizabeth, are you ready to help plan a wedding? Mom's eyes welled with tears, and Dad beamed with pride. I'm also adopting Tammy and Timothy, I said. They'll take my last name, too. Jackie and I will start house hunting as soon as we get back. What got your head out of your back? My dad asked, grinning as he leaned back in his chair. We all knew how you and Jackie felt about each other. I've been trying to get your mother's approval to knock some sense into you. Earl Carlson, behave yourself, Mom chided. You're not at the yard selling a car. Jackie, Mom continued, her tone softer, have you thought about your wedding plans? Jackie smiled, glancing at me. We haven't discussed it much yet, but since we're blending 3 families, it should be a family affair. Barb can be my maid of honor, Lou as Paul's best man, his brothers-in-law as ushers, Susan and Sandra as bridesmaids, Tammy as the flower girl, and Timothy as the ring bearer. She paused and turned to my dad. Earl, will you walk me down the aisle, with my father? Depends on who's paying the bill and if the 19th hole is stocked with Jack Daniels, Dad replied with a laugh. What do you think, Paul? Jackie asked, her voice full of hope. It's perfect, I said, smiling. It will unite us all. If that's what you want, let's do it. Jackie hesitated. Should we invite Sharon? Both of my parents immediately shook their heads and said, no. Mom, Dad, I said, my tone gentle, in the next few weeks, the media will reveal a lot. I'm suing the federal government, Sharon's parents, and her husband. I believe Sharon was as much a victim as I was. I paid the price years ago, and now Sharon is paying in ways we can only imagine. She thinks she's lost her daughters forever. I let out a deep sigh. Inviting her might help the twins rebuild their relationship with her. It could be a way for all of us to move on from the past. Jackie and my parents exchanged looks of surprise. Where did that wisdom come from? Dad asked, raising an eyebrow. These last few days have taught me a lot, I replied, squeezing Jackie's hand. Sandra's arrival made me grasp life again. We returned to my room, and exhaustion from the surgery overtook me. I fell asleep quickly, with Jackie sitting at my side, watching over me. When I woke up, Jackie filled me in on the latest news. Christopher McCormick and Arnold Harper had been arrested for lying to the FBI. The individual behind the contract on my life had turned state's evidence, leading to further arrests. Details of my firing from the FBI were also released, prompting an internal review. The media swarmed the story, exposing decades of deceit and manipulation. Dr. Proctor informed us that my mother and I would be released the next day. You'll need follow-ups and to get your stitches removed, he said. Susan is doing better than expected. The big question is how her body will respond as she's weaned off her medication. My parents decided to stay in the city until Susan's recovery was more stable. They made arrangements to fly back with us on the private plane, while the bus driver was instructed to return home. Over the following days, the media delved deep into the web of lies that had ruined my marriage and career. They revealed how Sharon's father had manipulated her into believing fabricated rumors. Sharon became a public figure of pity, dissected by the press. Jackie and I prepared to visit Susan one last time before heading home. Dr. Proctor proudly informed us that she was on the road to a full recovery. Amid the chaos, someone granted the security release my publisher and I had been waiting for, allowing over 1 million hard copies of my book to be printed. 2 first editions were delivered overnight. Jackie wrapped them carefully, and we hid them in a shopping bag. We ensured Sandra was in Susan's room when we arrived. Your dad and I have set the wedding date for the first weekend in August, Jackie announced. Aunt Barbara will be my maid of honor. I was wondering if you two would be my bridesmaids. Hell yes. Susan exclaimed with enthusiasm. Jackie smiled warmly. Susan, when I first walked into your dad's office, I was stunned. I recognized you immediately and said, "You're Sharon's daughter. How are we going to handle this?" You accepted me from day one. I would be honored if you called me Mom. Susan's eyes filled with tears as she nodded. I will, proudly. The 3 of them embraced tightly, and I watched in awe as Susan literally leaped out of bed. When the room calmed, I pulled out the gifts and handed them each a signed first edition of my book. To one of the 2 prettiest ladies who call me Dad, with love, Jason Blackstone, aka Paul Carlson, I had written inside. Susan gasped as she unwrapped her copy. Her hands shook as she flipped the cover open and read the inscription. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she looked up at me. Dad, you've already done so much, she sobbed, rushing into my arms. Before you came into my life, the hospital staff said I had only a few days left. Sandra knew it too. I don't know why she went into the attic, but I'm glad she did. It brought us you. Sandra watched us silently before stepping forward. Dad, she began softly, Dr. Proctor believes if Susan had only gotten 1 transplant, it wouldn't have worked. The double transplant shocked her body into responding. In the last 6 days, she's gained 10 pounds. I hugged both of them tightly. I didn't know if you would come, Sandra admitted. But you didn't hesitate. You brought a tribe. Tears welled in my eyes as I replied, I'll always bring the tribe for you. Thanks to the family, I'm getting my best friend back, Susan said with a grateful smile. How's your mom holding up? I asked, steering the conversation to something lighter. She's filed for divorce and started therapy to deal with a lifetime of lies, Susan replied. She told me she now understands what you went through and is ashamed of how she treated you. Mom says only someone who has experienced it can understand, it's a living hell. She's leaning on her work and friends for support. She's strong and will get through it. The key will be getting her to trust again. Right now, she doesn't know who or what to believe. Sandra, even with family support, it can take years to rebuild trust, I said gently. It takes an unexpected act of faith to start the process. For me, that moment was you walking through my office door. Thank God you did. Jackie chimed in with a teasing grin. Paul had me believing I'd die an old maid waiting for him to figure things out. Now, girls, she said, holding up her phone, stand by your father so I can take a few photos. The best one will be an 8x10 for his desk. When we stepped off the plane, Jackie's parents and children were waiting for us at the terminal, surprising us all. Tammy and Timothy ran toward me, nearly knocking me over in their excitement. Their joy was infectious, spreading to everyone around us. My dad chuckled, clearly enjoying the scene. "It's nice to hear them calling you, Dad," he said, nudging me. Watching Timothy, I realized he would have 2 older sisters and 1 younger, just like me. Tammy hugged my mom tightly and said, "I'm so glad you're going to be my grandmother." In that moment, I reflected on how quickly my life had changed, bringing blessings I never expected. Jackie and I decided to shelve our pre-Sandra plans until after the wedding. With her uncanny ability to manage everything, Jackie took on the task of finding us a new home, leaving me free to write my first fiction book. My previous works had exposed corruption and cover-ups, but this new project was different, a story inspired by the transformative events in my life. We kept in close contact with the twins as Susan continued to improve. Her recovery was remarkable, she had even returned to school part-time. Jackie found a 20-acre property with a barn that needed some TLC, and we hired a firm to design a dream home tailored for our blended family. The plans included a steel and brick house, an outdoor kitchen, a sprawling patio, a pool, and a 4-bay garage. Jackie reduced her office time, allowing me to focus on writing. With help from an editor my publisher recommended, I poured my heart into the story, completing over 300 pages. I decided to publish the book under my real name for the first time. Meanwhile, Sharon finalized her divorce from Arnold, using my lawyer to secure alimony and coverage for the twins' education. My lawsuits entered mediation, as their opponents seemed to lose the will to fight. The day finally arrived when Tammy, Timothy, Jackie, and I awaited the twins' arrival after their last school day. Timothy spotted the familiar Ford Explorer driving up the long, newly paved driveway to our home. "They're here," he shouted excitedly, running to the front door. We all went outside to greet them. As Susan and Sandra stepped out of the SUV, I was momentarily struck. Susan's recovery was so profound that, for a moment, I couldn't tell her from Sandra. Jackie leaned over and whispered, "We'll figure it out." Timothy, playing the role of the protective big brother, ran to grab their luggage while Jackie proudly showed off the house. In my new office, 3 pristine copies of my latest book, Unexpected Blessings, rested on my desk. It was a fictionalized version of our story, a tribute to the journey that brought us together. When the tour concluded, everyone gathered in the living room. I handed a copy of the book to each of the twins. Susan turned the book over in her hands, reading the title aloud. "Unexpected Blessings," she said softly, looking at me with tears in her eyes. "That's what we are to you, aren't we?" "Yes," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "That's exactly what you are." As Sandra hugged me tightly, Susan flipped through the book, stopping at the dedication page. She read it aloud. "To my daughters, Susan and Sandra, whose courage and love brought me back to life. You are my inspiration and my greatest joy. With all my love, Dad." Tears streamed down her face as she set the book down and wrapped her arms around me. "Thank you for finding us," she whispered. "No," I said, holding her close. "Thank you for bringing me back to life."